Okay, the time is, are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Chan. The time is 6:01. I'm calling the BOPEC of the Budget and Oversight Public Election Committee of the San Francisco Election Commission to order.
Very true.
We believe you.
So,
Roll call.
Secretary Chan, can we take the roll call, please?
Commissioner Donaldson,
Here?
Vice President Paris,
Here.
Commissioner Savant.
Here.
All present, you have a quorum.
Very good. Okay, moving on to item 2. Let's also mention that we do have Director Lawrence present.
Yes.
Thank you for coming, Director Lawrence, and members of the public. Okay, next item, general public comment. Do we have any general comment from the public on anything? Okay, very good. Moving on to item 3, approval of the minutes from the previous BOPEC meeting, February 1, 2017. Commissioners.
I move to approve the minutes from our last meeting, in the blank space adding Commissioner Dominic Paris under item 5.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner, Secretary Chan, if you would take the roll call, please.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Yes?
Vice President Paris,
Aye.
Commissioner Savant.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item 4, review of the department's, that is the February 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was one extra
I
thing.
pulled up the February 1, yes,
Sorry.
excuse me. Item
Progress.
4, progress of the San Francisco Open Source Voting Systems Project. An item to discuss the possible actions regarding progress of activities on the San Francisco Open Source Voting System Project. So we, with this item, wanted to, over the last few meetings, we've of course been getting updates, Director Arntz, on the progress of the Open Source Voting Project, and have greatly appreciated that. At the last meeting, we had yet to get applicants, or many applicants. We thought that there was still needed to be more for the position that was being opened up to support this project and essentially the acquisition and implementation of a new voting system, as well as in progress as an RFP. So we wanted to explore where we're at with that and see how that's been progressing. I believe we extended the deadline for applicants, and that closed yesterday, if that's right. So could you tell us how many applicants you have and whether you think you have any at this point, based on certainly preliminary, perhaps, but if you think you have people that are qualified to take that role?
Yeah, so I don't know the number. The deadline for applications was yesterday at 5. There are enough applicants for us to start organizing interviews, so hopefully end of this week, beginning next week, we can start to organize interviews, contacting folks to organize interviews, maybe starting next week. Then right at this time, I'm not planning to extend the deadline, depending on how the interview processes go. Potentially the position could be reopened for more applications. And once we start the application process, we'll determine finalists and make a decision from there. So.
Okay. Do you have a rough number of how many applicants you got altogether?
I don't remember the exact number, so I don't want to put a number out there.
Okay. Okay.
With the first batch of applicants before we extended the deadline, was the deadline extended because the number was just too small, or did you review any of the resumes and there just weren't any strong candidates that particularly popped out? Or we just wanted to have options open?
Yeah, I thought potentially we could gather more applications if we extend the deadline, so that was the basis for that.
And so, what is the time frame at this point? Do you think? Do you think it'd be by June or? Yeah, to fill the position.
Oh, it depends on the success of whoever is the candidate that gains the position when that person could start. But it really could be it could be 2 weeks or so before June.
Okay,
yeah.
So you think you would have that evaluation done at least?
Yeah.
Evaluations.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
to expect to be able to at least extend an offer by late in the month?
2 weeks. Yeah,
Okay.
it's around 2 weeks.
Wow.
Great. That's good to hear. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions on applicants for that role? Okay.
I'm anxious to see how many.
Okay. I guess before moving on to the RFP, just generally, or maybe it's inclusive of the RFP, around the RFP, any other progress or things to report around? I guess there was a couple of items. There was the request for $4 million that was put forth to the Office of the Mayor, I guess, if that's right. Any status on that or other actions other than around the RFP? We'll get to the RFP in a moment.
So on the matter of the funding, the $4 million request that the commission recommended a month ago or so, whatever it was, we did put that into our $4 million into our operating budget.
Okay.
For the current round of budget discussions for next fiscal year. The mayor's budget office shifted that $4 million into COIT, so it would be a matter that COIT would take up and make a decision on. And then I found out, and I found this out I think last week before, maybe it was the week before, COIT actually had the $4 million on its agenda for next fiscal year, and also there was a $2 million amount on the COIT agenda for a potential leasing of a system that was on the COIT agenda, and that the COIT members, or the panel, however it's stated, that they recommended to not fund the $4 million for developing an open source system next fiscal year, nor funding the potential lease of a voting system for next fiscal year. And then, so I asked the question to the director of COIT, how the process operates, and he said that the COIT will react to the business case that's submitted essentially to the mayor's office regarding the city developing its own open source voting system, and that COIT will again entertain the $4 million funding request, and potentially, if it's put forward, the $2 million to lease a system for fiscal year 18-19. So for fiscal year 17-18, there's no money that COIT will earmark for the voting system or for the potential leasing for an interim system. So that's as far as the funding is concerned. And then for the RFP, I finished the second draft of the RFP this week.
Before we go on the RFP, just a question. So when you said neither were funded for next fiscal year, so that was for 17-18 or for the 18-19? They weren't, because it's a 2-year cycle, right?
For 17-18.
Oh, for 17-18. Okay.
So
it's not. Is it a 2-year cycle for COIT, or do they do something different?
No. So the way the city operates, so it projects a 2-year budget,
right,
but every year there's still a budget process. So even though our budget, the Department of Elections budget for 18-19 will be populated in the budget system, for instance. Mm-hmm. When next year when it comes time for budget, we'll again enter into conversation about the 18-19 budget with the mayor's office. So it's not set. It's like a draft budget. Mm-hmm.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. And so even though right now there's no funding for 18-19 even in COIT earmarked for developing a voting system or for voting system stuff at all, it doesn't mean that no money will show up in 18-19 for a system, because the process will begin anew next January to May. Then also, after the business case is submitted, if the city were to decide to go forward with let's say not funding the development of an entire open source system, but to fund components of a voting system, then potentially COIT could fund those smaller funding issues, components from its operating budget, or even the mayor's office could could do it. So even though there's not a big chunk of money, my point is, even though there's not a big chunk of money in COIT or in the department's budget right now, it's not a statement that nothing's going to happen at all, going into to the end of next fiscal year. I'm not making a promise.
Sure.
But I'm also saying.
You're saying that structurally it's not an impossibility.
Right.
and
Right.
financially it's not an
Right.
impossibility. Okay.
Then on the RFP, so this week I finished the second draft. I incorporated the comments that I got from COIT and from the mayor's office, and so I issued that. I met today with the group that meets on a monthly basis, the mayor's budget office, COIT, and Department of Technology. We discussed what we need to do in certain sections of the RFP to get it done. I expect to get the next sections that we're looking at done by next Wednesday. Is the deadline, the internal deadline we have, so hopefully we'll hit that. So then I would get the next version out next week, and then that ought to be really just looking for typos and fine tuning any language, and then getting the final document done the following week. So like the third week of May, I guess, would be third or fourth week of May. We've already provided the RFP to the city attorney's office. We've been in conversation with the contracts monitoring, CMD, contracts monitoring division of the Office of Contracts Administration regarding that office's processes related to RFPs and contracts. So we hit the mark at the same time with all these different processes and forms and everything. So when the text of the RFP is done, all the process around the RFP is also done. Is what I'm saying. So that's ongoing. I expect to get that done really by next week. If I don't, then I'll enlist some other folks to take a look.
What do you think might hold it up, if anything? Some unexpected feedback?
No, at this point, I think just some process stuff. I think would be what might trip it up. And make sure that the people who need to make comment on it do, as far as process is concerned. Not content. I'm not too worried about that.
Okay.
And a lot of the content too, I'll say. I mean, I've received content from Commissioner Jordanek.
Okay.
Not specifically for this RFP. It's not like. But I have received in contemplation of an RFP, and I've included a lot of that text in there. So
right.
There's a lot of it's not just people from the mayor's office, Department of Technology, COIT, and then myself in putting content in the RFP. I mean, we have also from the commission we have content in there. So and I say this, so it's not a document. It's a document to actually facilitate the mayor's office receiving an accurate assessment of the city's options to develop an open source system. And so and at this point, it's a challenge in the city. It's just the processes, especially when it comes to contracting and RFPs. Even though it always seems straightforward, there's always something you got to go back and fix. So we're trying to make sure we fix those ahead of time. So.
Yes, and I do want to point out to the commissioners that we've included and it's available for the public from the February agenda packet, an outline that was part of our agenda packet then around the RFP. So that is for reference. I think it went over some of the points here that essentially the idea is that certainly looking at what the options are, et cetera, but also to get something that was quote unquote as close to shovel ready for the next phases and outlined what the next phases were or suggested to be, such as getting into a detailed design prototype, et cetera, and those kinds of things. So would you say that it is along these lines? I know that you have to be concerned about city procurement, so I don't want you to have to say anything you feel might be a concern in terms of any bid protests or anything. But
I appreciate that. The RFP is probably not as specific as the components of the system as this draft here, and there's I would say there's more of a listing of qualities that the city is seeking advice from this contractor who prepares the business case. And these qualities would potentially touch on specific elements such as what are stated in this draft document here that was handed out today.
Okay. With that, and as you said, it wouldn't be. This is not an anticipation that this would be the end of this. That there seems to be, you feel like some commitment, and there's open conversation about this, because not that there's an actual commitment of funds, but that basically that at this point they're letting you write an RFP that will help move this forward.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're not getting any pushback there. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. There is no like anti-RFP movement or anything. You know what I mean?
Well, anti-RFP, I guess I'm more concerned about a situation where somebody said, well, the proprietary system, buying a proprietary off-the-shelf system is, going to be less risk and all of that than open source, and so let's just do the cost-benefit, cost-risk analysis, and we're going to end up.
Oh no, it's hard for me really, without it being issued. No, not at all. It's
Okay.
certainly a document that's searching for a studied review of the city's options regarding developing an open source voting system.
Okay.
I have a question regarding our runway. If we're not going to get any additional money for any phase 2 funds, or the $4 million until fiscal year 18-19, is $300,000 enough of a runway to get our project going, or are we going to burn through those funds so that somewhere in fiscal year 18, come say July, we're doing 6 months of sitting on our hands, nothing to do? I mean, do we have any kind of cost projections of how that money is going to be used, and is that going to be enough money to accurately use our time? Or if we do run out of money, but we say, hey, this is great, we're ready to go on to phase 2, can we beg Coit or the mayor's office and say, hey, look, worthy cause you were going to fund, could we get some money earlier? Or, I mean, do you know the rules, the exception that that's pretty much a no and we've just wasted several months? Or just, do you have any idea?
Yeah, until it happens, I can't. It's hard for me to speculate. The $300,000 is funding the contractor to write the business case, and then the $300,000 is also funding the 1823, which a portion of that person's position will be, or job will be, to support the preparation of the business case. So that $300,000 is being expended essentially now. Then, as I said, so right now there's no big chunk that's going to be in either Coit's or the department's budget for fiscal year 17-18. However, I mean, that's one of the ideas too that have been advocated for, is that potentially just a smaller component than trying to go out and do the whole system, build the whole system. Potentially, there could be progress made on a smaller component more quickly after the business case. As far as funding for that, the development of a smaller component, right now, no, there's nothing earmarked for that. But since a smaller component potentially is not going to be $4 million, then there could be potential sources of funds to pay for the smaller unit to be developed. I'm not making promises, and that's not what but I mean, certainly that's an idea that's out there. So, but I can't make assurances either for or against, because I mean, the main thing that I'm doing now is get the 1823 in place, get the RFP issued, get the contractor up and running, go from there.
I guess one last question, just to make sure, amongst other things that might be in the RFP, I would hope that at least it would have some sort of funding profile. I think, ultimately, both short-term and near-term, so at least what came out of that would be give us some idea of what we would need to fund in 18-19 for whatever phases might be recommended next. And presumably, it would also recommend the structure of those phases. It would at least minimally do that, I would hope. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. Let's see. think I have other questions. Commissioner Sapant, any questions? Commissioner Jordan?
Paris.
Harris, excuse me.
Just like the Jordan would be. No.
Yeah, a little shorter.
No, not
I'm the one that usually does that.
Okay, and then public comment on this item? Okay. I believe that's the end of our agenda. Then, unless there are any other questions or actions on this item? No? Hearing none? Then we will adjourn the meeting of BOPEC at time?
6:20. 6:21?
Yep, 21.
6:21 PM.